Andrew over at Oak Lawn Blacksmith sent us this sweet little 25-pound anvil to take a look at, and it's representative of the quality that he makes all of his anvils in. Obviously, this is a smaller anvil, but he does make much larger anvils. In fact, the last one I saw him working on Instagram was 2,130 something pounds. That's a monster of an anvil. And of course, he makes things in between this size and that size. And we'll talk more about how you get a hold of Andrew at the end of this video. But to start with, I want to talk a little bit more about the anvil, take a look at the specs. Then we'll get it put up on a stand and put it to work and see what we can do with a little anvil like this. Now, this is a 25-pound anvil. It is 12.5 inches from the tail to the tip of the horn. The face is a little over 8.25. And if you're in the metric world, you can see the metric measurements on the tape here. And that leaves about 4 inches for the horn. It has a 1/2 inch hardy hole, a side face, an apron that helps reinforce this edge of the anvil, which is where so many anvils are broken down. So that makes this much stronger right through here, but still has a good square edge if you need a square edge on the offside. The other side of the anvil has a nice little upsetting block, really handy. And the overall height of the anvil is 5 inches. And anvils are not the only thing that Andrew has available. He makes some little swedge blocks, and he sent his little 5-pound swedge block. It's a nice little mini swedge block, and has at least one larger size swedge block. Has some small size cone mandrels, a little bit larger than most anvil cones, but not as big as a floor cone. So that'd be a really useful thing to have. And I'm sure he has other things available from time to time. Talk more about how you get a hold of Andrew and how you find his products at the end of the video. But if you're in a hurry to check it out, there will be some links down below. Now, this anvil would be an outstanding bench anvil. If you've never heard the concept of a bench anvil, it's just a smallish anvil that can sit up on top of your bench. That raises the anvil height higher than what you might normally work at an anvil, and is ideal for doing small work, setting pins, rivets, doing small punched holes in sheet metal that you would normally do cold. All sorts of uses for an anvil at the bench, and it's really nice in those situations to have that anvil up a lot higher so you're not bent over doing that fine, delicate work. It's work that you generally want to get closer up to your eyes so you can see it better. So this would be an outstanding bench anvil. Personally, I have something else in mind for this anvil. It's something that I wish I had quite regularly here in the shop, and this anvil will be the perfect solution to that problem. So let's get this put up on a stand, and then we'll take a look at what I have in mind for this anvil. The stand build is a separate video. That'll also be linked down below and at the end of this video. With the little anvil up on a stand, it's time to put it to work and actually make something using this anvil, and talk about how I would use this anvil in my shop. I have a nice big anvil. I don't need a little anvil. One thing that I often wish I had in the shop is an anvil just a little bit closer to the forge. And this applies to whatever kind of a forge you're using if you're doing a lot of forge welding, particularly in smaller material. Sometimes that extra step to come over to the big anvil is just enough time to lose your welding heat, particularly working very small stuff. So I look at doing finer, more delicate forge welds, particularly in the induction forge. Having an anvil that doesn't require me to take that step, a little bit taller because it's lighter, more delicate work, means I'm going to be more efficient, and I'm not as likely to lose my welding heat going over to the big anvil. Now, this is something I used to do in the coal forge just by setting a sledgehammer up on the hearth of the coal forge. So it was an 8-pound sledgehammer sitting up there on the forge. And that worked pretty well for the job, although it kind of bounced. It didn't have any of the other options that anvil has, like a horn, the little side face, or a hardy hole. So having an actual anvil that serves this purpose is going to be really nice. Now I'm going to kind of make this project up as I go. I've got an idea in my head, but I'm not sure exactly where I'm going with that idea. But my goal will be to make a ladle with kind of a fancy forge welded element at the top. And I'm going to start with that element so that I know what size it is. Then I will adapt my other work to fit the element. The center part of that element, I'm going to start with a piece of 1/4 inch square bar. No idea how long this is. And this is cut 8 inches long. So that's about 6 millimeter by 200 millimeter. For the main part of the ladle, I will use a piece of 1/4 by 1, so that's 6 millimeter by about 25 millimeters. And these are just some materials I happen to have on hand. I'm going to incorporate some round stock in this to get the element, but I'm going to start with this one piece, do it, and then see where everything else wants to go from there. Now I'm working in the induction forge, but that doesn't mean you can't do all of this in a coal forge or a gas forge if that's what you have. You can probably even do a lot of this with a torch if that's all you have. Well, that's just a brief look at the Oak Lawn Blacksmith 25-pound anvil. This is a completely functional anvil as long as you're doing small work. I certainly wouldn't set out to do something like a big gate project or railing project on a 25-pound anvil. But if you think about it, a couple of years ago, we made a fire poker with a hole in the ground forge using a sledgehammer that was just sitting in the dirt to work on as an anvil. That's an 8-pound anvil. Later we put a sledgehammer head in a stump so the whole thing had a lot more mass, but we were still working with an 8-pound anvil, and we were able to make a nice rustic style knife using that setup. So this is leaps and bounds ahead of any of those makeshift things, vastly better than the chunk of railroad track a lot of people start with. It's a really nice anvil, excellent fit and finish. The edges aren't overly sharp, but I think they could be rounded over some more. I had to watch to not get cold shuts, and I think I'll probably do a little bit of rounding in some places. I'll probably leave some of it on the tail fairly crisp so I have a crisp edge, but up here in this area I'll probably round that up a little bit more and round the edges of the hardy hole before I make hardy tools for this anvil. But if you're just getting started, you're just doing small work, you need a little bench anvil, maybe you're doing jewelry work, or a supplement to your big anvil, the way I'm going to use this for doing forge welding and getting it really close to where your heat source is, I think this is an outstanding anvil for that. And if you want to know more about these, follow Andrew over on Instagram. He frequently posts what he's working on over there, and he says that he will have more of these available later this summer over on his Etsy shop. So I will link to his Instagram and his Etsy shop down below so you can find these and know when they come available again. And he said he was going to have the 25-pounders available both in the Bavarian style, which is what this is with this apron and the side face, but also in a London pattern, which is a more conventional pattern anvil that most of you are used to. Again, this is not all he makes. He makes bigger anvils, so you need to pay attention to what he's doing both on his Etsy shop and on Instagram, or reach out to him and find out when he's making bigger anvils if you're looking for a bigger anvil. Personally, I probably won't ever be in the market for one of those 2,000-pound anvils. It would be awesome, but I don't know how I'd even get it through the door. As far as our little ladle is concerned, this is a successful project, but it's a bit disproportional. I should have started with wider material, and typically I would have, but I knew I was working on a small anvil and doing it by hand instead of working on a big anvil with big hammers or using the power hammer to spread the bowl. So I wanted to keep it small. And that's a perfectly acceptable little ladle, except that this forged element, which I also like, is a little big compared to the ladle size. So this would look good on the end of a hinge, maybe even a picket in a fence or railing. Some real possibilities for that element, but for the ladle, it needed to be downsized and made out of smaller material, which would really be a good use case for an anvil sitting right next to your heat source, because even working with this, I had a little bit of trouble running out of heat too fast. Now we did start off working the ladle in the little swedge block that Andrew sent along with the anvil. This is a little bit shallow for a ladle this small. If I was making a bigger ladle, this would have worked just fine. But it's also got some really small spoon swedges on the back. So that's something you might be able to put to use if you're making a flux spoon, something like that. And probably a lot of jewelry work would benefit from some of that stuff. And then it has the usual profiles around the edge of half rounds and V swedges. So there's a lot of useful stuff in this little swedge block. And we're going to look more at this swedge block and some others, because all of a sudden I seem to be growing a collection of mini swedge blocks, and this is just one of several that I have now. So thank you, Andrew at Oak Lawn Blacksmith, for sending out the anvil and the swedge block. This is going to be a regularly used tool in my shop. I'm really looking forward to having this available for the type of work I was showing today, and it's light enough I can take it across to the other shop if I'm working in the coal forge. Just a reminder that channel members and Patreon patrons receive early access to the videos. Patreon patrons also receive the videos ad-free over on Patreon. So if you're tired of the annoying YouTube ads, Patreon might be worth checking out. For everybody, thanks for stopping by to watch the video. I really appreciate it. Hope you have time in your day to get out to your shop, make something, stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next video.